Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I've got this Gold Sister Strat that I talked about in one of my previous episodes, but I'm ready to start working on it today. So we've got a few projects lined up for this thing today. I'm going to replace a pickup. I've got a new pickguard for it. We're going to add a tone control and just go ahead and finish assembly and setup. So we'll get started with that today. A little bit more history on these before I dive into it. These were produced in 2005. They're a Mexican model, and there were probably I think around 500 of this color produced. This is the Gold Sister, and I'll try to find a picture on Google or something to show you of the Silver Sister. Basically, the Gold Sister had a chrome pickguard or silver pickguard, and the Silver Sister had a gold pickguard, and so they sort of matched each other in that way. They were almost opposites of each other. So just like the Gold Sister that has a gold headstock, the Silver Sister has a silver headstock. So they're mirror images of each other that way. They had a special pickguard too. It was an HSS pickguard, obviously, and it was basically a shared pickguard configuration with a Strat that came, I think, a little bit later. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been 2006, called the Fender Big Block Strat. I actually started looking for the original pickguard for one of these things, and they're not cheap, and I ended up deciding that the HSS was not my favorite pickup combination anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap in a single coil on the bridge and add that extra tone and make it much more of a traditional Strat that way. Let's get started with that, and we're going to start out with the bridge pickup. All right, so here's what we're doing with the bridge pickup. I picked up this Texas Special on eBay. It was probably like 30 bucks. So I thought it was a great deal. You know, it's hard to find an American Alnico pickup for that much, and it's fiber bobbin and cloth wire and wax potted and all that good stuff. So that's a really good piece. I went ahead and measured the passive resistance of this pickup, and it's about 680. And I also measured the passive resistance of these two existing pickups that are in here. And these are the Mexican style with the ceramic bar magnets on the back. Surprisingly enough, their passive resistance was right in the same ballpark, about 6.8 ohms, or 6.8 kilo ohms, I should say. I also measured the polarity with the magnet, or a compass, I should say. I measured that this pickup is oriented poles south up. This pickup is oriented with its poles north up, and then this new bridge pickup is luckily oriented with its poles south up. So I'm not going to have any problems with the magnets on these. If I did, I would have actually just switched the original middle and neck pickup so that they would fit in with the alternating style of, you know, that the Strats normally had. Luckily, I don't have to do that. I can leave everything stock here, all this wiring stock. I will have to change the switch configuration and add a tone pot, but everything else works. The wiring on this, I did determine though, the electrical phase is different than the neck and the middle. What I mean by that, and you can go look at another quick tip video I've got on determining your pickup's phase and making sure it matches the other pickups in your arrangement. But basically, if you attach a ohm meter to a pickup like this, so if it's got a passive resistance of 6.8 like this one, and you take a metal object like a ruler or a screwdriver or something and you put it down on top of it, you should see something happen to the ohms. And what happens on this one is the ohms go down, and when I pull this away, the ohms go up. And it's just temporary, but if you do this across all your pickups, they should all do the same thing. So what happened on these two is when I put the metal object down on them, they went up, and when I pulled it away, it went down. So it's opposite of what this one's doing. So what I have to do instead of wiring this in traditionally is wire it in with the leads backwards. So basically I'd wire in the white as the ground and the black as the hot wire. What I'm going to do on this pickup instead, and part of the reason I got a really good deal on it, is that the leads are so short, they're borderline unusable. So I'm just going to actually replace the leads, and while I'm in there, I'm going to swap the order, and nobody will ever know that that went on. And in keeping with the theme of the pickups that are in here, this neck pickup has a yellow and black pattern to the wires. The middle pickup has a white and black pattern. I'm going to go ahead and make these yellow and black to fit with that alternating theme. And a normal Mexican Strat pickup in the bridge would have been yellow and black also. All right, so to start this conversion that I'm going to do on these wires, I obviously took the cover off the pickup, and I'm going to change that to black anyway. But basically, there's a hole in between the two connections for the pickup wires that Fender and all pickup manufacturers really fold the wires back down into. It sort of helps support them from being pulled out, keeps them in the center of the pickup, and provides a number of advantages. But I went ahead and backed them back through the hole so that they're now straight into the little lug that they're soldered into. So what I need to do now is just heat up that solder joint and pull that wire straight out. Okay, so you can see, basically what these are, they're cloth wire. It's pushback wire too, so you just push the insulator back out of the way. Basically, I had white here on the right of your screen and black on the left, and I'll be switching those, the order of those, and I'll be putting black on this side and I'll be putting a yellow wire on this side. Let's get started with that. Oh, and I'm going to use cloth pushback wire on that connection as well, just to keep with the original theme of the pickup. Okay, so to start things out, I've got my pickup with my connections desoldered, and I've got the cloth pushback wire, and I push back just a little bit for myself to use here. I'm gonna go ahead and give these things a healthy coat of rosin. That'll just help make sure that I make a good connection. And now, one thing I'll note about doing something like this is that the wire, you'll notice, I don't know if you can even see it, but the wire, if you look at a pickup that goes around the bobbin and goes into these lugs, is super duper thin. It's like a human hair thin. You have to be quick to do this. You don't want to overheat it. All right, and before I fold these back through and put them in that hole, I'm just going to check my passive resistance again. All right, so now it looks a little bit different than last time you saw it, but I went ahead and put these back through the holes because I've already checked my passive resistance, and the passive resistance is good, which means that I haven't upset the wiring or anything in the pickup, and it's still about 6.8, 6.9. The other thing I wanted to check just to make sure is that it went up when I put the ruler down on it, and it goes down when I pull it away. So all good on both counts, and this thing's ready to wire up. All right, so let's take a look at some of the parts I'm going to be using. Here's that Fender Chrome pickguard that I've got. I've got a Fender pot 250K for the tone control. Again, my completed pickup and the original wiring harness and the original knobs and one new one. And of course, I pulled everything out of the guitar just so that I could wire everything up on the pickguard, make it look nice, and then put everything back into the body. So everything's been removed from the body. I've cleaned up all the connections on here that I'm going to reuse, and now I just need to start the assembly. So I managed to lose audio during this section of the video, but here I'm explaining the wiring that I did. Basically, I've cleaned up the pickup wiring that I'm pointing out here, and I've added an extra tone control. I've upgraded a lot of the wiring. I've used some of the original wiring, but also some new cloth pushback wiring. And in this shot, you can also see the multiple tone capacitors that I used. I only used those because there was already a tone capacitor on one of the pots that I didn't want to disturb, so I just added a tone capacitor on the other tone pot. Also, really quickly before I end this shot, you can see where I've twisted up the input jack wiring. That helps with shielding, as does the ground wire that runs between the pots. And I've also twisted all the pickup wires up as well. I'm just hoping that that helps create a real noiseless situation. The metal pickguard actually does quite a good job of shielding the cavity, and there's shielding paint inside the cavity, and there's all kinds of grounding here, so I'm hoping for a noise-free installation. Okay, well, here's everything assembled, just on the front anyway. I just had to resolder in the jack, put the jack plate back on, and I fed all my wires that go through to the back through their holes. Obviously, I had to screw down the ground wire, and obviously there's a wire going between the jack and the main cavity for the jack, but I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over and work on the ground here for the claw. But the one thing that I always like to correct if I ever see this sort of V pattern, I like to straighten that out just because it makes your middle spring work a lot better and not just get unused, kind of like that one is. So let's correct that. That'll be step one, and then I'll solder that in. All right, that's got everything soldered back together. I usually like to route this wire just where it has some room to kind of stay out of the way of this spring in the middle. So route that where it's got just a little bit of slack, and that'll usually kind of keep it free, especially if the tremolo moves. Now I need to put this back plate back on and we'll be ready to start setup. All right, if you're looking at this back plate thinking, man, that's a plain back plate, a single ply, you know, nothing, no frills. Well, it wasn't that long ago that the Mexican Stratocasters all came with these, and the Player series is the one that introduced the better quality stuff. Some stuff on these Mexican guitars, especially the early ones, is kind of cheap. Next thing we need is a set of strings. All right, let me get this thing tuned up and then we'll be ready to do some setup. All right, I'm tuned up, so now let's move on to the setup. So the first thing I'm gonna do is check the neck relief. Again, if you wanna see the process for this, I've got a quick tip video on it, but capo on the 1st fret the guitar at the 17th fret, check the neck relief at the 8th fret using a 12 thousandths feeler gauge for this radius. Okay, I think the truss rod on this one could use a slight tightening. All right, that's right where I want to be, so I'm good with the truss rod now. Next, I'm going to move on to the action. Action on a Strat should be 4/64ths at the 17th fret, and you just need a ruler that does 64ths. Right now, I'm at about 6/64ths on the bass side and 5/64ths on the treble side, so I just need to adjust all these down. Okay, well, I think this is going to work out. I just got to go all the way across the strings. The only thing that's concerning me at this point is the height of these screws off of this saddle. It's going to be kind of a meat grinder on your palm there, but I think we can deal with that maybe another way. I don't think I'm going to shim the neck to take care of it, but we'll see. I need to see how the rest of these turn out when I finish. If you're wondering about the tool that I use for action setup, this is the actual tool, and you can see it's got a 64th gauge scale on it, which I use for American Instruments. But, you know, there are also inch measurements and there are also metric measurements on the back. And it has a handy reference chart for conversions between the two. And it also gives you some guide for action there that you can use if you like. But the thing I like about this particular one is that it actually works as a nice fret rocker as well. So if you're looking for a small fret rocker to go between 3 frets, there's one. If you're looking for a little bit larger one to go between 3 of the higher frets, there's one there. So it's a multi-purpose tool, and I'll put a link to it in my description. All right, so I've got my action set 4/64ths across the board at the 17th fret, and everything looks great, and it's all working great too. And I've not got any dead frets. I usually test that out, you know, above 12 at least. So there's nothing fretting out, and that makes me happy. So let's see, I've got to do pickup height next. And pickup height on a Strat, a baseline starting point is usually about 5/64ths on the bass side and 4/64ths on the treble side. That's what I'm going to use anyway, and you know, you can adjust that to your ear. What I like to do is start off with 2 Allen wrenches that are roughly the right size. So I've got a 5/64ths that I'll put on the bass side, E side pole, and a 4/64ths that I'll put on the high E side. And then I'll adjust those until those hit the string. And then you just work your way down, all the way down the pickups, doing the same thing for each one. All right, well, that's the basis for the pickup height. And yeah, I know I look weird bending over doing that, but my eyesight is really failing me lately. Things look good now. I guess there's not much left to do except test out all my electronics. So I'm just gonna do that really quickly. All right, well, I've got everything hooked up right. I definitely have sound out of all 3 pickups. Volume works, tone works for the neck pickup, tone works for the middle pickup. Obviously no tone for the bridge, and that's the way I want it set up. So everything's ready to go. Well, that's it for this thing. It's time to take it inside and give it a little bit of a workout. I appreciate you guys hanging out today. I really like it when you guys comment, like my videos, and especially when you subscribe. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you guys next time.